Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team? We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back again, another episode of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Austin. I am the host. Super happy to be here, always going live every single weekday, Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. You guys know the deal by now. That is just when we go live, and I hope you guys are tuned in, ready for another great episode. I definitely got a couple of very good segments that I have prepared for y'all. I've just been in the lab all day, chilling. Got to go to the gym for a little bit, hang out, watch some playoff baseball, and now I'm ready to just bring these beautiful segments to y'all for free. You know, we bring this to you for free, so if you want to drop a tip, support the show, right there, streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork. That's where you can do that if you are so inclined. Also, make sure you guys are checking out the Patreon. Every single day I'm going live for 30 minutes extra, giving out another two segments on the Patreon. So I definitely want y'all to be there. Don't want you guys to miss out on any fantasy football content that I put out. And also, guys, make sure you're liking and subscribing, interacting with the channel. It always helps the channel grow and helps the show keep going on. I love to see the support that we've gotten so far, and I really do appreciate you guys. If you have any questions or comments that you want to drop, any fantasy questions, I'm down to answer any fantasy questions that are asked to me. And without further ado, let's just get right into some of this content, starting off with Leonard Fournette. If you don't know by now, Leonard Fournette still not on a squad, not on a roster, man. Very, very disappointing for me personally. And if he does not get signed by week 5, I guess week 5 technically starts tomorrow, I have to buy his jersey and burn it. That's going to be a thing that I will do live on a YouTube short for you guys to see, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy seeing that. The challenge is coming to an end. I think I might just give myself till Sunday if there are some crazy events that happen. If not, and it doesn't look like there's any talk about Leonard Fournette getting signed at all. So you guys won. Congratulations. But yeah, not very excited about that. Will still be upholding, my side of that and buying his jersey and burning it if he is not signed by Sunday. That is the new deal. If he's not signed by Sunday, I will be doing that, guys. I'm going to give you a little bit of a segment rundown, kind of talk about what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to start you off with a Thursday night football preview. Obviously, got a game going on tomorrow in Washington, D.C., Commanders versus the Bears. I spent most of my time in the lab breaking down what's going to happen in that game. So I definitely think I have a good understanding, know exactly what's going to happen. So I'm ready to tell y'all my thoughts, my opinions on that Thursday night football game. And then second segment, we're going to be talking about some sleeper running backs that I like in week 5, guys that I don't think are getting enough attention, enough talk. And then we're going to go sleeper wide receivers in my third segment, where we're just talking about, guys that are at the wide receiver position I don't think are getting enough attention as well. And then make sure you stay for the last segment, because last segment I'm going to be talking about my best bets in Thursday night football. And I'm very excited to give y'all my best bets. I told you I was in the lab all day just looking for value, looking for the right plays, and I think I have them this time, guys. I went started off 4 for 5 on my first bets a couple weeks ago. Last best bets was not very good. Went 0 for 4. Want to keep that transparency. Make sure y'all are following me. Just keeping track of where I'm at with my best bets, because I do take pride in them. I do put my own money on them, and I will be doing that again in this week 5 matchup, the first one that we're going to get, Thursday night football. Very, very excited. But yeah, this game, Thursday night football, Bears Commanders in DC, probably not going to be the most exciting personnel matchup, but I do think there's some possibilities of points going up on the board. So that is at least exciting from a fantasy point of view. Commanders getting 5.5 points at home, which is relatively surprising. Obviously going up against an 0-4 Bears team that has not showed us a lot except for last week. They were up 28-7 and blew a lead to the Denver Broncos. Shout out the Broncos for getting that done. Russell Wilson, let's go. But, they looked a little bit better against the Broncos. So a little bit of happiness from Bears fans, happiness from guys who had Justin Fields. I was starting Justin Fields, so I was at least happy about that. Threw for like 300-plus yards, which I don't know if we've ever seen that from Justin Fields. So that was really cool. But let's get into this Thursday night football preview. Want to talk about the Bears offense first and kind of talk about their fantasy implications in this game. Obviously, they got Justin Fields currently sitting at quarterback 13 in fantasy football, and most of that rating is based on his last game. Put up like 27-plus fantasy points, had a pretty good game. They also have DJ Moore, who's wide receiver 13 in his own regard. Khalil Herbert, who had a pretty good game against the Broncos too, currently running back number 22. They got Cole Kmet, who is the tight end 3 in fantasy football right now, so definitely making some noise in fantasy. Cole Kmet is. And then finally they have Darnell Mooney, who pretty much rounds out their offense from a fantasy point of view. Chase Claypool obviously on his way out of that situation, so he's not even going to suit up or play. I don't think. He didn't play last week, and I think Darnell Mooney is going to be that wide receiver number 2. But let's get right into it, talking about Justin Fields. Justin Fields, man, great day, at least a great first half-ish. Started 16 for 16 throwing the ball against the Broncos, which I don't think we've ever seen from Justin Fields. This had to be his best day throwing, and his throwing motion still looked off, and he was still completing these balls. Didn't really run a lot, and ended up choking late in that game through a game-losing interception. Also had a really bad fumble 6 that was recovered, and the Broncos defense scored a touchdown. That was really unfortunate, really unnecessary mistake there. But I think Justin Fields has a possibility of going off tomorrow. Obviously, last week, 28 for 35, 335 yards, and 4 touchdowns through the air. I think those are all career highs for him. Also added in 4 rushes for 25 yards, which, we're expecting a little bit more on the ground from him, but can't ask for much more after putting up 335 through the air when he's technically a running back type quarterback. Hopefully he can carry some momentum into this Week 5 matchup. Crucial times in that last game versus the Broncos, had some crucial mistakes and choked late. He had a 3rd down, or maybe it was a 4th down, where he handed it off. It looked like it was a read option type play. Could have took it for himself, but ended up giving it to Khalil Herbert, and that kind of was like a turning point in the game for them. Let me get this little thing. We're talking Thursday night preview, obviously, but hoping he can carry some momentum into this next game after having a pretty solid performance. I think he's the most athletic quarterback to probably ever grace the field ever. Just trying to think of guys that are any more athletic than Justin Fields. A 6'3", like 200-pound, runs like a sub 4.4, very, very fast guy. Maybe like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, just because of his big arm, you could consider him as being like a better athlete. But I think just like size and speed wise, we're looking at the best athletic quarterback that we've ever seen of all time. So I'm hoping that we got some big runs incoming. I'll give you a preview on one of my best bets. I'm definitely going to have Justin Fields rushing yards in there, because I think it's about time that he pops off for a big day. And the books are just not asking for a lot, so I appreciate that. FanDuel, DraftKings, appreciate you. And guys, he's going up against a tough front four with the Commanders. Commanders have a really, really tough front four that they are boasting, with guys like Chase Young, obviously former Rookie of the Year, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen is really, really good, and then also Montez Sweat, who is, like a 260-pound guy that runs a 4.4. Had one of the most impressive combines that we've ever seen. Those guys are all first-round picks on their defensive line for the Commanders, so it's going to be a scary situation. We know that the pressure is coming, and I think Justin Fields is definitely going to have to run away from that pressure. Commanders have also kind of let up a lot of QB yards on the ground, let up a good amount to Josh Allen. Josh Allen scored a rushing touchdown in their game. They smacked the Commanders like 37-3 or something like that. Sam Howell had 4 interceptions in that game. Gave up the most rushing yards on the team to Russell Wilson in their game against the Broncos. Gave up like 35 points to them. and did a little bit better against Jalen Hurts. I think he still had like 40 yards on the ground. So I do predict a pretty big rushing day for Justin Fields, going up against a pretty mid secondary. I think their best guy is Kyle Fuller, and I just don't really trust him as a guy to cover everybody that needs to be covered on this offense. Obviously not the most impressive personnel, but decent guys. DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet have been getting it done. Don't really trust Fields' arm, so really think he's going to need to scramble around in this game. But let's talk about before we talk about pass catchers, we're going to talk about running backs on the Bears side of the ball. Pretty much just a Khalil Herbert show, and we saw that last week. He had a really good day against a really bad defense is pretty much what happened. 18 carries for 103 yards, also added in 4 receptions for 19 yards and the touchdown. Pretty solid fantasy day, 22 points for him. First real big performance that we've seen from Khalil Herbert, and I think a lot of people were looking for him to, be that lead back, and we didn't know if it was going to be him or Rashawn Johnson that was going to carry the load, and it seems like Khalil Herbert is going to be that guy. Backup Rashawn Johnson only got 5 carries in that Week 4 matchup, and Khalil Herbert ended up with 22 touches, so that's always going to be a great sign for fantasy football. At least a guy you're going to put in your flex position if we're projecting 15 to 20 touches, and I could definitely see that happening in this game. Bears currently ranked on PFF second in run efficiency. Somehow, with them being second in run efficiency, they are 32nd in run block, literally the last in the league for run block statistics. That is really, really bad. Don't really see Khalil Herbert popping off tomorrow. Don't see him having a great day. Big task ahead of him with those really good D linemen, all four first-round picks, and obviously very talented guys that the Commanders have invested in. So I definitely don't love him this week, but I feel like you kind of have to start him if he's going to get those 15 to 20 touches that we're seeing that he could possibly get in that Week 5 matchup. As far as Bears pass catchers go, love DJ Moore, man. I absolutely love DJ Moore. I think he's a very talented guy, and obviously the Bears do too. The Bears, I don't think a lot of people are aware of this, but the Bears gave up their number 1 pick in the draft last year, who would have been Bryce Young, obviously. But they could have took whoever they wanted. They ended up giving away that pick and trading back to get pick 9 and like some other assets to get DJ Moore. So obviously they love this guy. They think he has a lot of talent, and he's Justin Fields' favorite target at the moment. Definitely his favorite target. These last 3 games, he's put up 13 plus fantasy points in each game. Also, 2 of those 3 games, he's went over 100 yards. So he's been hooping. He's been absolutely putting on a show, and he's going to be that number 1 target. I see him having a pretty big day as well. We got to talk about Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet had a big day in Week 4, 7 receptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was definitely hooping himself. Somehow, guys, Cole Kmet is tied in targets with DJ Moore at 24 targets for that Bears offense. About 6 targets a game, so that's going to get it done. Pretty much enough to be your starting tight end in any league. Any 10 to 12, 14-team league, Cole Kmet's going to have to start. He's also only 1 behind in receptions for this Bears team as well, with 18. Moore has 19 receptions. Obviously, a lot of these receptions came in Week 4, but unfortunately, PFF is also giving Cole Kmet a really bad matchup this week, going up against Jamin Davis, but I just don't think you really have an option. He's going to get the volume, it seems, and he's part of this offense. Hope Justin Fields can get him the ball with his weird throwing motion, but I think you just still start Cole Kmet. And it's kind of a no-brainer play. He's tight end 3 right now in fantasy. It just makes sense to start this guy. Finally, we're going to talk about Darnell Mooney real quick. Darnell Mooney, really, really good player. Like him a lot over these past couple years, and he's shown like how fast and athletic he is from that slot receiver position. He's been struggling with a knee injury, and I feel like a lot of people, if you don't have Darnell Mooney on your roster, you probably don't know that he's been struggling with a knee injury just because it's not being talked about a lot. But the Bears like him more than they like Chase Claypool, and that is a really good sign because Claypool was that long, athletic, still fast wide receiver, whereas Darnell Mooney is more of like the small, shifty, quick slot receiver. But Darnell Mooney's snaps were definitely up in week 4. Got like 60 plus snaps in this game, so that's a great sign. Went 4 receptions for 51 yards in week 4, 9 fantasy points it totaled out to, so not too bad. Nothing to like tip your hat at, but I think his stock is currently rising and going to be someone that you're going to want to keep an eye on in DFS if you're going to play DFS for Thursday or something like that. Could definitely see him making a big play or two. Let's get to this Commanders offense as well. I know this segment's running a bit long, so maybe we'll cut down one of these other ones, but got to talk about this Commanders offense. Obviously, they got Sam Howell sitting at quarterback number 19 in fantasy football, Brian Robinson sitting at running back 8, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 27, Jahan Dotson, who's had a bit of a lackluster year at wide receiver 61, and then they also have Curtis Samuel, who they use as kind of the utility weapon at wide receiver number 45 right now. Yeah, guys, this is definitely not the most talented personnel by any means. I really do like their offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. Think he's a very creative mind when it just comes to getting the ball down the field and creating plays for his players to be successful. Commanders team 2-2 so far. They played the Eagles really, really close. Played them to an OT loss, and they had a shot to go down and win it. They just couldn't get it done. A bit of a questionable call, and then Jalen Hurts went with a tush push on 4th and 1, and that's just an unstoppable play. I don't know who's stopping that really in this league today. Nobody has shown the ability to stop the tush push, so definitely crazy. But they got Sam Howell at the helm. Sam Howell at the helm. Solid player. Definitely, I think is like a capable QB. Would consider him mid-tier at best right now, but he does have a big arm, and he's shown some wheels. He showed some wheels in week 4 versus the Eagles, rushed for like 40 yards, which is really not in his repertoire, but I love to see it. He looked pretty fast to me. This far throughout the year, I think he's struggling with getting the ball out quick, and obviously his sack numbers show that. He's been sacked 24 times already in 4 games, so that averages out to 6 sacks a game. That is bad. That is really, really bad. But this week he's going up against a really bad defense. Bears defense has been giving it up to absolutely everybody. Just gave it up to the Broncos. 28-7 they were locking it up, and then couldn't find a way to put the game away. Very, very tough game for them. But I like Sam Howell to have a pretty big day. Week 4 versus the Eagles, he went 29 for 41, 290 yards, and a touchdown. Anytime a quarterback is about to eclipse those 300 yards, he's having a pretty good day. Like I said, also added in 6 rushes for 40 yards. Pretty capable, and I just like him to have a big game. I also did pick him up because Justin Herbert is on a bye, so he was the guy that I'm going to be going with in my Week 5 matchup in fantasy football. This Commander squad also has my favorite young running back in the entire league in Brian Robinson. Definitely my favorite young running back. Very big bruiser, and he has the speed to turn on the burners and burn everybody on the field, go all the way to the crib. Running back 8 right now, and has found some success early. 3 touchdowns in 4 games played, and I love him mostly from a fantasy point of view because he gets the 15 to 20 touches that we're looking for. Like I was talking about Khalil Herbert. Any running back, especially getting the 15 to 20 touches per game, is just going to be someone you're going to want to put in your lineup if he's on your squad. Week 4 didn't have a crazy game, but went for 14 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. He also kind of like dropped a touchdown. He was running into the end zone and then like threw it up in the air for some reason, and Terry McLaurin ended up getting credit for that touchdown. So he technically should have had 2 touchdowns and a bit more fantasy points in this game. But I really like Brian Robinson and think he has a lot of potential in this league. Remember, this is the guy who got shot twice. Bro got shot twice, and 1 year later, he's just making noise in the league. I really love to see it. Talk pass catchers real quick. They got Terry McLaurin. He's heating up, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Obviously a very talented wide receiver. Week 4 went for 8 receptions for 86 yards. Ended up with 22 fantasy points, so definitely a good sign that their wide receiver 1 is finally wanting to, play football. So very good. Terry McLaurin leading the team in receptions, targets, and yards right now. So he's pretty much a must start. He should get the volume, especially against this bad Bears defense. It doesn't make sense for him not to. in any way. Then they got Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson had a really big year in year one, and he's just kind of looking to find his footing now. He's struggling a little bit. Last week was a good sign for him. He caught a game-tying touchdown with no time left on the clock. That was really clutch for his team. Obviously, they ended up losing, but like Jahan Dotson, think he has a lot of potential. He's a wide receiver 2 for the Commanders right now. Just naturally, he's going to be the one that after Terry McLaurin gets his, full meal, then Jahan Dotson is going to get whatever's left in that passing game pretty much. He had a couple crucial drops to start the season, so hopefully we're out of that, out of the woods with that, but we'll just have to see with him. Hasn't put up a very impressive fantasy season thus far, and a lot of people were using, those 6th and 7th round draft picks to draft him, and he's wide receiver number 61, so he needs to pick it up for everybody for sure too. And then they got Curtis Samuel, pretty athletic vet. Definitely like Curtis Samuel just from like a football perspective. He's been around. He's still really fast, and he's pretty much the utility guy for this Commanders offense. He is 2nd in yards for this Commanders team too. So I know a lot of y'all see Curtis Samuel just sitting on the waiver wire. I think he does deserve a spot on, your 12-team fantasy league. I think he just deserves to at least be on the bench and just see what he does, because he does have the capability to go off. He had a jet sweep touchdown in week 4 too, which was really cool to see. I also really like Logan Thomas on their offense. He's a tight end, another vet. Him and Curtis Samuel pretty similar in that aspect, but just some other guys that I really like. I do think that the Commanders are going to find a way to come out with this one, probably because of a Justin Fields mistake, but that's just my opinion. That's my Thursday night preview for this week. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts if you have any. But when I come back, we're going to be talking about my sleeper running backs. And maybe we'll keep my sleeper running backs and wide receivers as one segment. We'll just have to see. But I got some sleepers for y'all, so come back with me. No time to waste, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just get right into it. Talking about my sleeper running backs in week 5, guys that I like their matchup, and I don't think they're getting enough respect, enough talk, so far throughout the season. And the first guy I got to speak on is Isaiah Pacheco, man. Isaiah Pacheco, obviously the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, very good player. Currently ranked at running back number 14 in fantasy football and averaging 14.5 fantasy points at the moment. Just a must start in pretty much any situation that you're in. Started off the season not too hot. Week 1, only 9.4 fantasy points, but still got 12 touches. Week 2, 13 touches, only ended up with 8 fantasy points. But then weeks 3 and 4 has turned it up a little bit. 17 touches, went 15 carries, 62 yards, and a touchdown versus Chicago. We love targeting Chicago. Always want to, have your players If you have a matchup where it's like start sit and one of your players is playing against the Chicago Bears, it just makes sense to start that guy. Close your eyes and pray that he has a good game, because the Chicago Bears are not looking to stop anybody on defense. Then next game, week 4, he was playing against the Jets, at the Jets, and Jets defense supposed to be really, really solid. He popped off this game, 20 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Also added in 3 receptions for 43 yards, totaled out to 24.8 fantasy points, finishes one of the top performers in week 4, and this dude just runs hard. You could just tell that he cares. He gets hit really hard, takes the contact, and, he's not like the person like talking stuff to the other team or whatever. He just gets up, does his little celebration, and then gets right back to the backfield, and just keeps working hard. He's just a really hard worker. I really like this guy. He was like a mid-round draft pick in the league, and a lot of people are not talking about him. I think he deserves to be like a top 10 type running back, respect, just because of how hard he runs. Next guy we got to touch on is going to be James Conner, if I can find him here. James Conner, obviously one of the hardest runners in the league too. He was in my winners for week 3, I believe, because he had a really big day in week 3. He's currently listed as running back number 16. And similar to Isaiah Pacheco, this guy just has an iron will. Obviously, this guy fought through cancer, beat cancer up real quick, no big deal, and is just on the field after the Pittsburgh Steelers let him go, playing for the Arizona Cardinals. It's all the same to him, and has been performing pretty much every week in fantasy except for week 4 against the San Francisco 49ers, which is not that big of a deal. We don't really expect many running backs to, turn up versus this really good all-pro filled San Francisco 49ers defense. It just doesn't make sense to ask that from many running backs except for like the top tier guys. But besides that game against San Francisco, 12 points, 16 points, and then 19.6 points against pretty solid defenses. Not too bad. He had his best game against the Dallas defense, and everybody's talking like the Dallas defense is, God or something like that, with Micah Parsons being in the middle. But I really like James Conner this week. He'll be facing... Man, I just had him. James Conner will be facing the Cincinnati Bengals, who are obviously in shambles right now. They are terrible. They've been giving up a ton of points, and it's not just Joe Burrow and their offense. Their defense, has been giving up, 25, 27 points very easily to these other NFL teams that are not that good. So definitely like James Conner this week as well. Another sleeper that I want to talk about is going to be Breece Hall. He's going to be playing against the Denver Broncos this week, so that's the main reason that I like him. Breece Hall has had he hasn't even had one good game. He had one good run in week 1 where everybody was, excited, especially me, because he's my running back 2 in one of my leagues. Had a really good run for like 80 yards, and then since then he's just been quiet the entire time. Very, very quiet. Week 1, obviously, 10 carries, 127 yards. Also added in a reception for 20 yards. He is a dangerous receiving back, too. If he gets in space and is able to make one guy miss, he could be gone. Still dealing with that ACL injury, too, though. So I think that's been like the reason that he's not touching the ball nearly as much. Against Kansas City, he only had 6 carries for 56 yards, and then added in 3 receptions. So only 9 touches. Definitely not what we're looking for from a fantasy point of view, but going up against a Denver defense who to Khalil Herbert just let up 100 yards and 22 fantasy points. Breece Hall is much better than Khalil Herbert in every aspect, so I do like him to have a big day on Sunday as well. The Denver Broncos is going to be a defense that you're going to want to constantly be targeting too, and it just makes sense to have any start-sit situation. You want to have, Bears defense, Broncos defense. You see those people going up against your guys. That's going to be good news. Final guy, maybe we'll talk about one more guy after this, but I want to talk about Jonathan Taylor real quick. Finally eligible to play. Super excited about that. Have Jonathan Taylor on both of my squads. And apparently he's eligible to return from the physically unable to perform list in this Week 5 matchup against the Titans. We'll see just how he does. Obviously, Zach Moss has been a big factor in the Colts offense. He's been pretty much getting like 98% of the snaps and all the touches. They also had Evan Hull, who was supposed to be like their third down back or their backup running back, go down. And now he's on IR, so Zach Moss has been filling all the duties. Now Taylor has, the potential to come in and be the running back one type of candidate that he has been previously. Obviously, he's had some down time where he's not performing, and I just think that's okay. I think he was a risk worth taking in fantasy football this year, and we'll see how it plays out. He's going to play up against a divisional opponent who he's seen multiple times, and want to kind of check on his history versus the Titans. So let me do that. Definitely not a crazy history versus this team. No 100-yard rush games, anything like that. But I just think he's a guy you have to keep your eye on. Definitely be watching out for what he does in this Week 5 because Jonathan Taylor has potential to pop off anytime. He is a great athlete, and obviously his ankle is no longer injured. He just got 4 weeks of rest to just chill and rehab whatever was going on. So I think he's going to be someone that you absolutely have to watch out for. That's going to wrap it up for my sleeper running backs. I got Isaiah Pacheco, James Conner, Breece Hall, and Jonathan Taylor that I think are going to have potential to have a really big day. But come back with me so we can talk about wide receivers. And I got some interesting wide receivers that we're going to speak on. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? We're back. Make sure y'all liking and subscribing. If you want to drop a tip, you can do that. It's no trouble for you to drop a tip if you are so inclined and support the show. But right now we're talking about sleeper wide receivers in Week 5. Super excited to talk about a couple of guys who I think are, just being a little bit slept on and have potential to have a really big day. First guy I want to talk about is going to be Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, obviously very impressive rookie, very fast rookie, very twitchy, and I call him Baby Tyreek because I think he just has all those abilities. May take him a little second to find his spot in this offense, but it looks like they're wanting to get him the ball and get him the ball in space because he has the ability to make people miss. Week 1, we heard a lot from Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers was a big part of the offense in Baltimore's win versus Houston. 9 receptions for 78 yards, got 10 targets in that game. Obviously, Mark Andrews didn't play in that game too, so that was a factor as to why he was so heavily targeted in that game. But since then, has been a bit quiet, has put up double-digit fantasy numbers 2 of the last 3 games, with 10.8 fantasy points versus Cincinnati in that big win. 13 fantasy points against the Colts, 8 receptions for 48 yards on 10 targets there. And Mark Andrews was playing that game. So, pretty impressive. Just being a rookie. And then week 4 came back, 3 receptions for 56 yards. Still making plays, and he's also recorded a carry in every single one of his games. So definitely a threat to, do the jet sweep and make a big play for his squad. I just really like this guy. I really like him a lot. He's going up against Pittsburgh in week 5 here, and we've seen C.J. Stroud kind of tore up Pittsburgh's defense. The only guy that I'm worried about in Pittsburgh's secondary at all is Mika Fitzpatrick. Other than that, they have been struggling to keep up with these wide receivers, and there's really nobody in the league who's going to be able to keep up with Zay Flowers anyway, just because of his crazy speed and agility. So I think you could look at him as someone to start rather than sit in week 5. He is ranked way down on the wide receiver list right now. Also think he's someone that I think people are undervaluing a lot right now, someone that you could look to trade for. Get like a nice big piece, like if you're going to trade for Jonathan Taylor, and then you also get Zay Flowers, because a person who has Zay Flowers is like, oh, well, Zay hasn't really been doing anything. He's going to have an average season. I still think he has a lot of potential to pop off for Baltimore, and Lamar definitely needs someone other than Mark Andrews to throw to, so it's going to be will end up being most likely Zay Flowers. Next guy, got to talk about this guy. Very, very good wide receiver, and someone who's already put up a 29-point game and then a 15-point game in fantasy. And I'm talking about Jacoby Myers, currently listed as wide receiver number 32 in ESPN PPR leagues. Week 1 had a really big day versus Denver. Once again, guys, target Denver. Target the Bears, target Denver. That is a good strategy in fantasy football right now. But pretty big game week 1, 9 receptions, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo was playing that game. Next game, in that game, he suffered a concussion, I believe, and he got hit really hard. So he didn't play in week 2 versus Buffalo. But then week 3 came back, 7 receptions, 85 yards on 12 targets against Pittsburgh. So kind of like what I'm saying with Zay Flowers, like Pittsburgh is willing to give it up, especially to those wide receiver 2 type guys. Then obviously the Raiders lost to the Chargers in week 4, and Aiden O'Connell had to make a start because Jimmy Garoppolo had a concussion. And I think that's the main reason why he didn't see as much of a target share. Devontae Adams had a pretty down game against the Chargers too. And Jacoby Myers only had 2 receptions for 33 yards in that game, only 5.3 fantasy points. But they'll be going up against the Green Bay Packers in week 5 here. Obviously, Jair Alexander, who is their best guy, probably a top 3 corner in the entire NFL, is going to have his hands full with Devontae Adams and trying to deal with whatever he's going to have for him. So I think if Jimmy Garoppolo is able to play, which signs are showing that he should be able to play, he's still going through concussion protocol right now, so it's not 100%. But if Jimmy Garoppolo is able to play, then I think Jacoby Myers is in for a pretty big day. He's already had 2 10-plus target games that he's put on in his first 2 games that he's played with the Raiders at all. Then down game with Aiden O'Connell makes sense with the backup quarterback and not a lot of chemistry. So I think if Jimmy Garoppolo plays, that Jacoby Myers should have a pretty good day in week 5 for sure. Next guy I want to make sure we are talking about is someone who I had on my sleepers list to start the year, even before a game was played. And I was talking about Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, really solid player, still very young. I feel like a lot of people don't know that Gabe Davis is still 24 years old. Gabe Davis looks like he's 34 years old. So it's very interesting when I heard that information. But regardless, he's been putting up pretty decent fantasy numbers after week 1. Week 1, pretty iffy game, 2 receptions for 32 yards, 5 fantasy points. Definitely not going to get it done from your flex position or your wide receiver 2 for that matter. But since then has put up double-digit numbers in weeks 2 through 4. So, if my flex position, a guy who I'm really not expecting too much from, is putting up 10-plus points, I'm just going to be happy with that. And that's something Gabe Davis is doing right now. Good game against the Raiders in Week 2, 6 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown. Week 3, 1 reception for 35 yards and a touchdown versus Washington. And then against Miami, 3 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. So he's on a 3-game touchdown streak at the moment. It looks like they're looking for him in the red zone. He is a big, strong wide receiver, and obviously Stephon Diggs is going to get a ton of attention, so no reason to not pay attention to Gabe Davis. He's going up against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville, they're just middle of the pack as it pertains to their secondary. They have a pretty good linebacking core, pretty decent D-line, and they do have Tyson Campbell who plays corner for them, but I'm sure that he is going to be having his hands full with Stephon Diggs and whatever he's going to be bringing to the table. So why not Gabe Davis to have a pretty good day against this Jacksonville defense? They just had a really long flight too. They had to come all the way back from London, technically on a short week at that point, I feel like, just because of the travel day. So they may be a little behind. Obviously, Josh Allen is heating up, just threw for like 300-plus yards. So I definitely think Gabe Davis has potential to have a very good day. Want to talk about Michael Thomas too. Michael Thomas, very, very good wide receiver in my opinion. In his first 3 weeks, he has also put up double-digit fantasy points. Week 4 almost got there, and he has not found his way into the end zone yet. But it just seems like Derek Carr kind of relies on this guy. A lot of people call Michael Thomas slant boy just because all he runs is slants, and he's really good at running slants. He catches a lot of slants, so that is fine. If he wants to do that in my flex position and just catch 5 balls for 50 yards pretty much every game, that's going to get it done for me. 10 points pretty much every single game. 11 week 1, 12.5 week 2, 11 week 3, and then 9.3 week 4. Going up against New England, who is going to be missing their top corner, who would be Christian Gonzalez. I think he was like the 4th pick in the draft. Very, very good player. And they do get J.C. Jackson. The Patriots just signed him from the Chargers because they were kind of having a rift. So he's going to be in the mix. But I just like this guy, man. Really like Michael Thomas. Think that if he's ever going to have a season where he's, comes back and puts up 1,000 yards, it's going to be this season with the new quarterback, new situation, and kind of like a fresh start for him. So why not him to have a really good day against New England, who has a bit of a beaten up secondary right now. Also want to talk about Adam Thielen. Obviously, Carolina Panthers are down bad right now at receiver. They are struggling. Jonathan Mingo is just not playing that role that they thought he would be playing. He's getting the target share, which is good for him, but he's just not turning those targets or those receptions into anything. So it seems like Adam Thielen pretty much is going to have to carry the entire receiving load for this Panthers offense. And Bryce Young, very talented quarterback. Do not get it twisted. Bryce Young is very talented and has the ability to, make every throw on the field. He just needs some protection. He needs a good wide receiver, and Adam Thielen is his best wide receiver. No question about that. Adam Thielen has been going crazy in fantasy since week 1. Week 1 had a pretty bad performance, 2 receptions for 12 yards on 2 targets. Hayden Hurst kind of dominated that game for whatever reason. But since then, 20 points, 31 points, and 15 points. This is a very solid guy who we've seen just kind of, be that guy, undrafted, very hard worker, chip on his shoulder type dude for the Vikings. And he's getting a ton of targets in this offense. 9 targets week 2, 14 targets week 3, and then 8 targets in week 4. So doing a lot. And I think a lot of people are not really talking about him. He was someone that I spent a late round flyer on, and it looks like it's paying off. Definitely going to start him in my flex position. In my fantasy league, we have 2 flex positions, so he's going to start in my second flex position technically. But don't think enough people are talking about Adam Thielen and the work that he is putting in right now, going up against the Detroit Lions in week 5. And we've seen the Detroit Lions definitely give it up. Obviously, they lost their best guy in the secondary with C.J. Gardner-Johnson to IR. So, why not Adam Thielen to break out and have another big day? Because he's done it the past 3 games, 15-plus points in his last 3 appearances. That is going to do it for my sleeper wide receivers. When I come back, I'm going to give you all my best bets. And if y'all are here, y'all get my best bets. Very exciting. Put a lot of research into this. Like I said, I've been in the lab all day. So make sure you come back and watch the best bets segment. Like I said, guys, no time to waste. No time to waste by any means. I got to get these best bets to you guys in no time at all. And I told you guys earlier in the show that the first best bet I'm going to be going with is going to be Justin Fields over his rushing yards. FanDuel currently only has him at 45.5 rushing yards, which makes no sense to me. He could do this in 2 plays very easily. Obviously, I think he's going to have a ton of pressure on him from guys like Montez Sweat, Chase Young, former Rookie of the Year, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. These are all big names, very talented guys, Ohio State and Bama guys that are very, very good. And I just don't think it's going to be hard for Justin Fields. It should be very easy for him. He's hit this in 2 of 4 games this season, and I just really do think that he's going to have to run for his life in this game. I really don't like his throwing motion. Think his throwing motion is very shaky at best, and it just makes sense for him to get out of the pocket. This is a guy that ran for like 120 plus yards in 4 or 5 games last year. 45.5 should be very, very easy. And I just simply don't trust his throwing arm to, get it done for this Bears offense. So I think he's going to have to run to help, win the game or cover the spread or whatever they're going to do. I don't know what the Bears are going to do. I feel like we really don't know what type of Bears team is going to show up on the football field at any given time. But I think I know for a fact that Justin Fields is going to go over 45.5 rushing yards. That is going to be my favorite bet for this Thursday night football game. Like I said, guys, I put my hard-earned money on this, so don't worry. And I spend so much time in the lab. This is my favorite bet of the day, no question. Next one, we're going to have Sam Howell over his rushing yards. And I was telling you that Sam Howell has some sneaky wheels. He has some wheels that I feel like a lot of people just are not aware of. They only got him at 13.5 rushing yards, and I just think he's too quick for this. He's kind of a guy that likes to hold on to the ball. Obviously, we talked about his sack numbers. Already taken 24 sacks through 4 games, and I know that doesn't feel good. I think every single time that you take a sack, it is probably equates to a small car crash, so that can't feel good on the body. He enjoys holding the football. He's going to have to find some way to get out of pressure, and that's probably going to be with his legs. It's really weird. I was trying to look into his 40 time and see if he had ran a 40 time in coming into the NFL. Obviously, last year was his first year. He only started 1 game, and he's just been flying under the radar, real smooth, until he turned into the starting quarterback for the Commanders this year. But he did not run a 40 time at the Combine. Didn't really do anything at the Combine, which is really weird if you look it up. But I think I would qualify him as a guy who has 4.7, maybe 4.8 type speed. Not too slow. Probably as fast as maybe a little slower than a Trevor Lawrence type guy, in my opinion. So that's going to be my second best bet. Sam Howell over 13.5 rushing yards. I think that'll be easy as well. Then I'm going to go to my favorite player on the field that will be playing tomorrow. That's going to be DJ Moore. Like I said, guys, DJ Moore, very, very good player. Bears think so too. They gave up the first round pick in the draft to get DJ Moore as well as some other things. And they only have him at 48.5 receiving yards for this game. Twice this year, he's already eclipsed 100. Justin Fields is constantly looking at him. He's going to get the lion's share of the targets, whatever that may be. We don't know how many times Justin Fields is going to throw the ball, but I know he's getting the lion's share of the targets. He's, Justin Fields' favorite wide receiver. no question. He leads the team in targets, also leads the team in yards, and he's just an amazing athlete going up against a mid-tier secondary. He's going to have Fuller on him, trying to guard him, but I just think that he's going to outperform him in every single way. 48.5 receiving yards for a guy that's already gone over 100 in similar spots. I think that's just too easy. So I got DJ Moore over 48.5 receiving yards too. Finally, I'm going to talk about a guy who didn't really talk about in the Thursday night preview segment, but I want to talk about a little bit, and that's going to be Logan Thomas. I was watching the game recap of the Commanders playing against the Eagles. Obviously, really good game. If you didn't watch that game on YouTube, you can see all of the NFL game recaps. It's like a little 10-minute video of these games, of like the important things that went on in these games. And Logan Thomas was quietly everywhere on the field. He was not having a bad game, and I was surprised to see that he only had 3 receptions for 41 yards. It looked like he had a lot more than that just when I was watching the recap, but he also had a carry for some reason, which was kind of interesting. Just really like this guy. He's been good for a long time. He's obviously a vet in the game, and I think Sam Howell's going to have to find that guy, like when you can't throw it to Terry McLaurin out on the outside. Need that guy who can catch those little short yardage situations, and I think that is Logan Thomas for these Commanders. The best game that we've seen from him was this 4 receptions for 43 yards game in week 1 against Denver, 2 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown. He's actually been quietly performing as a fantasy player. 8.3, 10.2, and then 7.3. He was a guy who suffered a concussion as well in week 2, so kind of still lingering from that. But I really think that against Chicago, he could have a pretty big game. And they only have him on the books at 26.5 receiving yards. I think that's just too low for him. He's only gone under this one time this year. He recorded 62 snaps in week 4, which is a lot. He's the primary tight end. They don't really have another guy that they're looking at to be a tight end, to be like the pass-catching tight end for their team. They have a couple other guys who will like block, but he's really the pass catcher in this offense. He also got 23 slot snaps, so he wasn't even lined up as a tight end for a third of the time, which is really cool. Pretty decent athlete, and think that he'll be fully recovered from that concussion here in week 5. So I do like Logan Thomas on his over as well. So that's going to be my 4 best bets. Justin Fields over rushing yards, Sam Howell over his rushing yards, DJ Moore over his receiving yards, and Logan Thomas over his receiving yards. Guys, that's going to wrap up the show. I appreciate y'all if you tuned in. Always working hard. If you want to drop a tip, you can do that right here, streamelements.com/GSMC sportsnetwork. But that's going to be it. I will be back here 7 p.m. tomorrow to give y'all some more fantasy coverage. Make sure you're here Friday for my matchups episode. That's my favorite episode and the one that I spend the most time on throughout the week. So make sure you're here for that. But I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Peace.